Deep in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley stands Baalbek, a place where myth and history collide. Towering columns and vast temple ruins testify to Roman grandeur, but it is the colossal foundation stones, some weighing over 1,000 tons, that ignite endless debate. How were such enormous blocks cut, transported, and set with precision in an age without modern machinery? Stay tuned to unlock the mystery of the Baalbek. The Baalbek structures from the Neolithic era. Long before it became a marvel of Roman engineering, Baalbek was already a site layered with history. Archaeological excavations reveal traces of human settlement in the Bekaa Valley as far back as the Neolithic period, around 9,000 to 7,000 BCE. The fertile plain provided water, arable land, and a strategic crossroads between Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. It is little wonder that Baalbek became a sacred landscape, repeatedly redefined by the cultures that passed through. What the Romans eventually built was not created in a vacuum. It was an ambitious extension of millennia of earlier habitation. By the Bronze Age, the site had taken on religious significance. Ancient Semitic-speaking peoples revered it as a sanctuary for sky gods and fertility deities. Some accounts suggest it was dedicated to Baal, the storm and fertility god, from which the name Baalbek, city of Baal, derives. Archaeological evidence from this era is fragmentary, but hints of altars and cultic spaces suggest a continuity of worship that stretched deep into antiquity. This continuity of reverence would become crucial as each new empire absorbed Baalbek into its own pantheon. The Hellenistic period, following the campaigns of Alexander the Great, brought Greek influence to the region. The Seleucid rulers and later the Ptolemies left their mark by integrating the site into a wider Greco-Syrian religious network. The storm god Baal was syncretized with Zeus, the ruler of Olympus. Such religious blending meant that when Rome expanded eastward, Baalbek was already primed for incorporation into Roman imperial cults. To the Romans, it was Heliopolis, city of the sun, a name that framed the site as cosmopolitan and divinely radiant. The Roman period was transformative, beginning in the late 1st century BCE and continuing for more than 2 centuries. Baalbek underwent one of the most ambitious construction projects in the empire. The centerpiece was the Temple of Jupiter, one of the largest sanctuaries Rome ever attempted to build. The podium alone was a staggering platform requiring not just skilled architects, but also the political will to marshal immense resources. Construction spanned generations, with emperors from Augustus to Antoninus Pius contributing to its development. Each sought to leave an enduring mark on this eastern jewel of the empire. Adjacent to Jupiter's massive sanctuary, the Temple of Bacchus rose in almost equal splendor. Unlike Jupiter's unfinished grandeur, Bacchus's temple remains remarkably intact, with ornately carved columns and reliefs still standing today. Dedicated to the Roman god of wine, agriculture, and ecstasy, it reflected both Rome's cultural importation and the valley's own traditions of fertility worship. Smaller temples, including those of Venus and Mercury, completed the sacred complex. Together, they formed one of the most extraordinary temple precincts of the ancient world. The scale of Baalbek's Roman construction cannot be overstated. It was not merely a religious center, but also a demonstration of imperial authority. In the eastern provinces, where local cults often retained great influence, Rome used monumental architecture as a form of persuasion. To approach Baalbek was to be overwhelmed by power rendered in stone. Pilgrims, traders, and subjects who entered the city saw temples that rivaled anything in Rome itself, reinforcing the idea that the emperor's reach extended without limit. As centuries passed, Baalbek's fortunes rose and fell with the empires that controlled it. With the Christianization of the Roman world in the 4th century CE, the pagan temples lost their centrality. Some were repurposed into churches, others fell into disrepair. By the Islamic conquests of the 7th century, Baalbek remained a formidable fortress town, but its religious role had shifted. The massive stones of the podium still loomed, baffling onlookers, and by the medieval period, they had already given rise to myths of giants and supernatural builders. The sheer audacity of the Roman undertaking was so overwhelming that later generations could scarcely imagine it as the work of ordinary humans. At the heart of Baalbek's enduring mystery are the megaliths themselves, colossal blocks of stone that dwarf even the grandest achievements of other ancient civilizations. The megalithic stones. These stones are not merely architectural features. They are symbols of audacity, raising questions about technology, ambition, and purpose in antiquity. The podium of the Temple of Jupiter and the nearby quarries contain some of the largest stones ever carved by human hands. To this day, their scale stirs debate about how and why they were made. The most famous are the trilithon, three massive blocks that form part of the Temple of Jupiter's podium wall. Each block measures approximately 19 meters long, 4.2 meters high, and 3.6 meters thick. Their estimated weight is staggering, between 750 and 800 metric tons apiece. To put that in perspective, that is more than twice the weight of the largest stones used in Egypt's Great Pyramid. Positioned neatly side by side, they create an imposing foundation that has led some to claim they were beyond the reach of Roman engineering. Yet there they sit, perfectly aligned and integral to the temple's design. Equally famous is the so-called Stone of the Pregnant Woman. Lying half-buried in the quarry roughly 900 meters from the temple, it is a single limestone monolith estimated at around 1,000 tons. Its name comes from local folklore. One tale claims that any woman who touches it will become fertile, while another says a pregnant woman deceived workers into believing she could move it if only they fed her, thus explaining why the stone was left unfinished. Whatever the story, the block is a marvel of ancient quarrying, its smooth faces suggesting it was nearly ready for transport before being abandoned. Nearby lies another gigantic block known as the Stone of the South, weighing an estimated 1,242 tons. Unlike the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, which has been known since antiquity, this block came to scholarly attention more recently. Measuring about 20 meters long, it is one of the heaviest stones ever carved. For years, archaeologists debated whether it had been fully detached from the bedrock or whether cracks in the limestone prevented its movement. Either way, it testifies to the scale of ambition at Baalbek's quarries. Even more extraordinary is the Forgotten Stone, discovered in 2014 during excavations at the quarry. Estimated at nearly 1,650 tons, it is considered the largest known monolithic block from the ancient world. Its sheer size redefines the limits of what ancient builders were willing or attempting to achieve. Carved with astonishing precision, the Forgotten Stone appears to have been abandoned because its base was uneven, making it unsafe to transport. This detail suggests that ancient builders tested the boundaries of weight and size, and when practical limits were reached, they simply left the stones where they lay. Together, these stones represent the upper threshold of ancient stoneworking. The precision with which they were cut, their smooth surfaces, and the logistics implied by their scale have fueled centuries of speculation. Were they meant to awe, to display imperial might, or to serve some long-lost engineering necessity? The Romans did not typically need blocks of this size to build their temples. Most of their monumental architecture relied on far smaller stones combined with concrete. At Baalbek, however, the choice of megaliths seems almost deliberate, as if the grandeur of the project demanded materials of unprecedented scale. The practicalities alone are daunting. Even with modern cranes, moving a 1,000-ton block would be a logistical challenge. The fact that these stones were carved, transported short distances, and in the case of the trilithon, set into place with millimeter precision, suggests an extraordinary level of organization. Ancient engineers may have employed wooden rollers, sledges, and manpower on a scale rarely attempted elsewhere. Some researchers point out that the quarry's higher elevation relative to the temple site would have helped, allowing gravity to assist in transportation along prepared earthen ramps. But even this explanation requires careful planning and immense labor forces. Comparisons highlight Baalbek's uniqueness. In Egypt, the unfinished obelisk at Aswan, weighing around 1,200 tons, remains one of the largest monoliths attempted in antiquity, but it was never moved. In Europe, the massive stones of Stonehenge weigh up to 25 tons each, impressive but tiny next to Baalbek's giants. The Romans themselves transported obelisks of 300 to 400 tons from Egypt to Rome, feats that were already considered remarkable. Yet Baalbek's blocks exceed even that scale, raising the question, why here and why so large? One theory is that the stones formed a symbolic link between human construction and divine permanence. By using blocks that seemed immovable, the builders may have been creating a foundation that mirrored the eternal realm of the gods. Another theory is more pragmatic. Local limestone deposits naturally fractured into enormous slabs, and rather than cutting them smaller, the builders exploited their size. Whatever the reason, the outcome is a platform that continues to inspire awe. Walking among these stones today, one cannot help but sense the ambition of those who envisioned them. The trilithon, firmly embedded in the temple podium, has stood for nearly 2 millennia without shifting. The abandoned stones in the quarry, meanwhile, tell a story of limits, of how far ancient engineers were willing to go before acknowledging defeat. Together, they form a dialogue between triumph and humility, between what was achieved and what proved impossible. For all the mystery that clings to Baalbek, mainstream archaeology maintains that the site is an extraordinary but explainable feat of Roman engineering. Archaeological explanations. Far from invoking aliens, lost civilizations, or supernatural forces, archaeologists point instead to evidence of skilled craftsmanship, careful planning, and the immense organizational power of the Roman Empire. The explanations may not resolve every question, but they provide a framework that makes the construction of Baalbek more comprehensible within the capabilities of the ancient world. The Romans were no strangers to ambitious building projects. Across their empire, they erected aqueducts that carried water for dozens of miles, amphitheaters that could seat tens of thousands, and temples that rivaled those of Greece in grandeur. They mastered the art of quarrying, transporting, and placing enormous stones, often pushing the limits of what was possible. One need only look at the Colosseum in Rome, the Pont du Gard in France, or the relocation of Egyptian obelisks to the capital to see the scale of their ambition. Against this backdrop, Baalbek was not an isolated miracle but part of a broader pattern of Roman imperial display. Archaeological surveys of Baalbek show that the construction occurred in stages. The foundations of the Temple of Jupiter, where the trilithon blocks are located, appear to have been laid first, suggesting careful long-term planning. Tool marks on the stones, visible both in the quarry and on site, are consistent with Roman stone-cutting techniques, particularly the use of iron picks and chisels. These marks, far from being mysterious, anchor the work in the technological practices of the time. One of the key arguments in favor of Roman engineering is the proximity of the quarry. The massive blocks, including the stone of the pregnant woman and the forgotten stone, lie less than a kilometer from the temple complex. This short distance significantly reduces the problem of transportation. While moving a 1,000-ton block is still daunting, it is more feasible than hauling it over many miles. The incline from the quarry to the temple platform also worked in the builder's favor, allowing gravity-assisted movement along prepared tracks or ramps. Roman engineers were adept at using a combination of manpower, wooden rollers, sledges, and lubrication with water or oil to move heavy loads. Historical records, such as those describing the transportation of Egyptian obelisks to Rome, suggest that thousands of laborers could be mobilized for a single task. With enough people and coordination, the seemingly impossible becomes achievable. Experimental archaeology has shown that even with pre-industrial methods, moving stones weighing hundreds of tons is possible. Scaling this up while challenging was not necessarily beyond Roman capabilities. Another important factor is the use of treadwheel cranes and lifting devices. The Romans pioneered the treadwheel crane, a machine powered by humans walking inside a large wheel, capable of lifting heavy weights. By combining multiple cranes and using pulleys to multiply force, they could raise substantial loads. While a 1,000-ton stone was too heavy to lift in its entirety, cranes could have been employed to make incremental adjustments, helping slide blocks into precise positions once they were near their final setting. The tight fit of the trilithon stones, which appear almost seamless, may have been achieved through such incremental movements rather than by lifting them wholesale into place. Comparative examples bolster the case for Roman engineering. The heaviest block transported to Rome, the Lateran obelisk, weighs about 455 tons. While this is only about half the weight of Baalbek's largest stones, It demonstrates that the Romans did not shy away from massive logistical challenges. At the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus and other sites, blocks of several hundred tons were also used. Baalbek represents the upper end of the spectrum, but it is not entirely without precedent. Excavations at Baalbek have also uncovered inscriptions and architectural features that tie the site directly to Roman culture. Latin inscriptions record dedications, construction phases, and imperial involvement, particularly under Augustus and later emperors. These inscriptions anchor the temple complex firmly in the Roman world, rather than some hypothetical lost civilization. The columns, capitals, and decorative motifs follow Roman styles, even if adapted to local traditions. Archaeologists see Baalbek not as an anomaly, but as a provincial expression of Roman power and religious devotion. That said, not every detail is fully understood. The decision to quarry and attempt to move stones weighing over 1,000 tons remains puzzling, since smaller blocks would have sufficed structurally. Some scholars argue that the colossal size of the stones was symbolic, intended to impress both locals and visitors with the sheer power of Rome. Others suggest it may have been a practical choice, exploiting naturally large limestone strata in the quarry. The fact that some stones were abandoned suggests that the builders pushed their methods to the limit and sometimes failed. There are also questions about sequencing. The trilithon blocks, set neatly into the podium wall, are so large that they must have been placed at an early stage of construction. This raises the question of how the rest of the structure was built around them. Archaeologists continue to debate whether the massive stones represent an initial phase of foundation laying that was later integrated into the Roman temple, or whether they were specifically chosen for the podium to give the sanctuary an aura of permanence. Importantly, archaeologists emphasize that the mystery lies not in whether humans could have moved the stones, but in how exactly they did it. The lack of written records describing the logistics leaves room for speculation, but the available evidence, tool marks, quarry locations, architectural styles, and inscriptions all point toward human ingenuity rather than alien intervention. The very existence of the abandoned blocks in the quarry supports this view. If superhuman methods had been available, why leave them behind? The failures tell as much about the process as the successes. In the broader context of Roman engineering, Baalbek is a logical, if extreme, expression of their technological repertoire. It was a project designed to awe, to demonstrate the power of the empire, and to honor the gods with structures that seemed eternal. The challenge of the megaliths was not incidental but central to this goal. For the Romans, achieving what seemed impossible was itself a form of propaganda, reinforcing their claim to dominion over both nature and people. Archaeological explanations do not dispel the sense of wonder at Baalbek, but they frame it in terms of human achievement rather than supernatural intervention. The site becomes a testament to the ambition, organization, and skill of an ancient civilization operating at the height of its powers. Even if uncertainties remain, the evidence strongly supports the conclusion that Baalbek was within the capabilities of Roman builders. The mystery, then, is less about whether they could do it, and more about why they chose to attempt it on such a staggering scale. If archaeologists see Baalbek as a triumph of Roman ambition and engineering, legends and alternative theories cast it as something far stranger. Legends and alternate theories. From biblical giants to extraterrestrial architects, the site has inspired a vast body of speculation that reflects not only the mystery of its stones, but also humanity's tendency to weave the unexplained into myth. These stories do not rest on inscriptions or tool marks, but on imagination, folklore, and the enduring appeal of mysteries that resist simple answers. One of the oldest traditions links Baalbek to the biblical figure of Cain, son of Adam and Eve. According to this legend, Cain built the colossal foundations of Baalbek after being cursed to wander the earth. Some versions suggest he constructed it as a fortress to protect himself from divine wrath, while others claim it was meant to house his descendants. The sheer size of the stones fit neatly with this narrative, presenting Baalbek as a monument created by a figure marked by superhuman defiance. Other legends attribute the site to the Nephilim, the mysterious race of giants mentioned in the book of Genesis. The argument here is straightforward. Only giants could have moved such colossal stones. Folklore across the Levant reinforces this view, often portraying Baalbek as a place inhabited or built by beings of immense strength. These tales echo similar myths worldwide, where cyclopean walls and megaliths are ascribed to giants rather than ordinary men. Islamic tradition also holds Baalbek in a special light. Some stories link it to King Solomon, who, according to the Quran, commanded jinn, which are supernatural beings, to build great works on his behalf. Under this view, Baalbek's stones were not moved by human labor, but by invisible armies carrying out Solomon's divine orders. Such narratives highlight the site's aura of wonder, framing it as the work of beings outside ordinary human capability. Local names attached to the megaliths themselves reflect the blend of myth and mystery. The stone of the pregnant woman is perhaps the best example, associated with fertility and magical powers in regional lore. Villagers long believed that touching it could aid conception or protect pregnancies, linking the immense block to the cycles of human life. Its unfinished state lent itself to stories of trickery and curses, rather than technical failure. The trilithon blocks, embedded in the temple podium, also gave rise to supernatural explanations. For centuries, travelers marveled at their seamless alignment and assumed they must have been placed by forces beyond human control. Medieval chroniclers often referred to the stones as the foundations of the giants, a phrase that carried both literal and symbolic weight. In modern times, Baalbek became a favorite subject of ancient astronaut theorists, most famously popularized in the mid-20th century. Writers like Erich von Däniken, author of Chariots of the Gods, argued that the scale and precision of Baalbek's megaliths were beyond the abilities of ancient humans. He suggested instead that extraterrestrials provided the technology or direct assistance. Under this interpretation, the massive platform at Baalbek was not a temple foundation at all, but a launch pad for alien spacecraft. The flatness of the podium and the arrangement of the stones were cited as evidence of an extraterrestrial runway. Supporters of this theory pointed to the absence of detailed Roman records describing the construction of the trilithon as a suspicious omission, implying that the site's true origins predated Roman activity. While mainstream archaeologists dismiss these claims as pseudoscience, the alien theory remains popular in documentaries, online forums, and speculative books. The allure lies not only in the mystery of the stones, but also in the broader narrative that ancient civilizations had contact with advanced beings, a story that captures the imagination precisely because it transcends ordinary history. Another alternative theory posits that Baalbek was originally built by a prehistoric civilization whose knowledge was later lost. Advocates argue that the Romans found an existing megalithic platform and built their temples atop it, repurposing foundations they could not have created themselves. This idea gained traction from the observation that the trilithon stones appeared different from the smaller blocks and decorative elements of the Roman temple. Proponents suggest that the platform may date back thousands of years earlier, perhaps even to the last ice age, when an unknown culture supposedly mastered stoneworking techniques now forgotten. The lost civilization theory often dovetails with myths of Atlantis or other vanished societies. According to this narrative, Baalbek is a remnant of a world-spanning culture that collapsed, leaving behind enigmatic ruins. While evidence for such a civilization is lacking, the theory thrives because it offers a way to reconcile the stone's size with the belief that known ancient societies could not have built them. Some alternative thinkers focus not on aliens or lost worlds, but on the possibility that ancient humans possessed advanced technologies now forgotten. These range from elaborate pulley systems and hydraulic lifts to speculative ideas about sound-based levitation. Proponents argue that if we give ancient engineers credit for innovation, we may find that they had methods of moving megaliths that we simply no longer understand. One recurring suggestion is that Baalbek's builders used earth ramps and counterweights on a massive scale, techniques that could theoretically move stones of nearly any size given enough time and manpower. Another proposes the use of lubricated sledges, sliding on logs or wet clay. While none of these ideas have been proven through experimental archaeology at the scale of Baalbek's largest blocks, they remain within the realm of possibility. What unites these legends and theories is the refusal to accept Baalbek as merely another Roman temple. The sheer size of the stone seems to demand extraordinary explanations, whether rooted in scripture, myth, or science fiction. For many, the rational answers offered by archaeology feel unsatisfying, reducing a miracle to a matter of logistics. These stories also reflect cultural needs. In medieval times, attributing the site to Cain or Solomon tied it into familiar religious frameworks. In the modern era, alien theories resonate with a fascination for outer space and the possibility of contact with other civilizations. Each generation reinvents Baalbek in its own image, ensuring that the site remains not just an archaeological monument, but also a canvas for human imagination. Whether one views these legends as quaint folklore, dangerous pseudoscience, or creative attempts to explain the unexplainable, they are an inseparable part of Baalbek's story. They keep the site alive in popular culture, ensuring that it continues to inspire awe and curiosity far beyond the confines of Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. In recent years, Baalbek has been revisited not just by archaeologists with trowels and measuring tapes, but by teams wielding drones, 3D scanners, and even artificial intelligence. The solved mystery. The application of modern technology has given the ancient site a new kind of visibility, stripping away some of the mystery while deepening our appreciation for the ingenuity involved. For those who long viewed Baalbek as an unsolvable puzzle, these studies have provided the clearest evidence yet that the site, however extraordinary, fits within the bounds of human capability. A breakthrough came in 2014 when German archaeologists from the Deutsches Archäologisches Institut uncovered the forgotten stone at the quarry. Measuring more than 19 meters in length and weighing an estimated 1,650 tons, it surpassed all previously known monoliths at Baalbek. Its discovery was crucial because it showed that ancient builders had not only attempted to quarry blocks of unimaginable size, but also abandoned them when conditions made transport impossible. In the case of the forgotten stone, its base was uneven, making it prone to cracking if moved. This practical detail suggested a trial-and-error process rather than supernatural intervention. Digital mapping of the quarry and temple platform has revealed how the stones were prepared and positioned. 3D scans show consistent tool marks along the surfaces, confirming the use of iron chisels and levers. Engineers studying these marks argue that the blocks were carefully detached using systematic techniques rather than brute force. The precision observed in the trilithon's placement can be explained through incremental adjustments, aided by levers, ramps, and coordinated manpower, rather than any lost or alien technology. AI simulations have added another layer of clarity. By modeling ancient construction techniques, researchers have tested how many workers would be required to move a block weighing 800 to 1,000 tons. The results suggest that with thousands of laborers, lubricated sledges, and gravity-assisted ramps, the task, while monumental, was feasible. Far from being impossible, the feat represented the upper threshold of what was achievable with ancient methods. AI has helped quantify the logistics, translating vague speculation into measurable scenarios. Recent studies also emphasize the organizational power of Rome. The empire's ability to mobilize resources on a massive scale is often underestimated. Historical records document the transport of obelisks from Egypt to Rome, some weighing 300 to 400 tons. At least once, Romans moved a 455-ton obelisk, the Lateran obelisk, across the Mediterranean and erected it in the capital. If such efforts could be accomplished at the heart of the empire, then pushing the limits further in a provincial city like Baalbek was not beyond imagination, especially when local stone resources made colossal blocks readily available. Structural engineers analyzing the podium of the Temple of Jupiter have found that the enormous blocks may not have been strictly necessary for stability. Smaller stones could have sufficed. Instead, the choice of using massive megaliths may have been a deliberate statement. By building on a scale no one else dared, the Romans projected both permanence and divine authority. In this light, Baalbek becomes less a technical puzzle and more a political and religious performance in stone. The convergence of archaeology, engineering, and digital tools has led most scholars to conclude that the mystery is largely solved. Baalbek stones were not the handiwork of giants or aliens, but the product of Roman ambition, organization, and persistence. The abandoned blocks in the quarry, especially the forgotten stone, underscore the limits of human effort. They show that the builders sometimes failed, a detail that fits awkwardly with supernatural explanations, but comfortably with the realities of trial, error, and engineering risk. Yet even as the how has been demystified, the why continues to fascinate. Why attempt stones of such enormous size when smaller ones would do? Why risk failure when the temple could have been completed more easily? Here, modern research offers no definitive answer, only educated guesses. Some suggest symbolism, others practicality, but the ultimate motivation remains a matter of interpretation. What modern studies have achieved is a reframing of Baalbek. The site no longer needs the scaffolding of myths to inspire awe. Instead, it stands as a monument to the outer limits of human ingenuity in the ancient world. The Romans, driven by faith and empire, harnessed the tools at their disposal to achieve something that even today feels barely possible. Far from diminishing Baalbek's mystery, this recognition deepens it, transforming the question from who built it to what drove them to dream on such a colossal scale. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and click on the next video shown on your screen.